Welcome, everybody, to the Homemakers panel. So last fall here at the farm, we hosted a Homemakers Conference. It was our first one. It was a dream that kind of came to be really last summer, and it happened really fast. And so today we're going to experience a little bit about what we experienced last fall. So before I bring the ladies up, I want to show you a little video so you kind of get a glimpse into what we are doing. Good morning. We are so happy to have you here at our first Homemaker Conference.
We are all women on a path. And it's a journey and a path that God has called us to.
All our ancestors were homemakers, or we wouldn't be here.
In that 10 years and 2 miscarriages and fertility treatments, I quickly realized that having children was not part of God's design for me.
So if you know that's not the culture in your home, fix it. And for me, Nathan doesn't always meet my emotional needs, which is often tied to me meeting his physical needs. But I told myself, God, I'm going to do it anyways. And I want you to change my heart on how I view it.
It is so obvious to me that the Holy Spirit does the calling, and I feel that, and I even felt that on the airplane here. I thought, it's for me. I just knew it. It's for me, isn't it, Lord? Thank you so much. You're so gracious to us.
So that is, it was a powerful weekend spent together with these women. And so I'm so thankful to bring up the women, and then we'll talk a little bit about our vision, our desire for what that weekend means, what homemaking means to us, celebrating the role that we believe God intended for us. And so let me bring up Jill Reagan, Annette Thurman, Beth Doherty, and Allison Bales. Come on up. That video gets me every time. Welcome, ladies. I feel like we were just doing this a few months ago. So again, the Homemakers Conference really was inspired by the desire, especially in today's world, is to celebrate women for who they are, for what God wants us to be, and for the roles that we have the honor and pleasure to play and be a part of. And we want to celebrate that with you all today. And so today's goal is we're going to ask some questions. We're going to hear from these ladies, really what homemaking means to them. And I think you'll be a little bit surprised at everyone's answer. We have a great panel here who comes from different walks of lives, who have different perspectives on what homemaking means to them. We will have conversation up here, and then I will give you all a chance, if time allows, to ask some questions to any of these ladies up here. Also, fun side note, at some point there's going to be a QR code up there, and we are having another Homemakers Conference this fall in October. Thank you. October 18th. Yes, I should know that. We are having one October. I think it's October 19th and 20th or 18th and 19th. But there will be a QR code here for you guys to get your tickets now for that. Alrighty? So first, I think we should go around and just tell everyone who you are. Yes. Oh, we're not on.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello?
Still not.
Hello, can you hear me? No. Okay, I'm just going to keep talking. I am
as to like where we're from and stuff like that? Okay, so I'm Jill Reagan. I am from Central Arkansas. My husband and I farm full time. We grow food, flowers. We're just raising our family. We do a lot, but we are so excited to be a part of this. Obviously, we're growing our family. I'm sure we'll get into that later, but I was actually pregnant at the Homemakers Conference and had no idea the irony of the conversations we had. Yeah, Beth walked up to me and she's like, about those conversations. But it's just a joy to be here with you guys and just share with you guys. I think, again, different perspectives of homemaking. I will probably have one of those different perspectives. But thank you guys for coming out and just chatting with us today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Annette Thurman, and I live about an hour north of Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. I live there with my husband and 5-year-old daughter. I stay home full time, and then I also do my kind of side entrepreneurial thing doing Azure Farm, where I share things online and help educate and inspire you to hopefully live kind of this homesteading life. And it's really fun. And I believe there's strength in community and getting to know each other and helping each other out, and that's why I'm here.
I'm Beth Doherty, and you probably don't know who I am because I don't have an online presence. My husband and I live in northern Appalachia. We've been homesteading for almost 40 years, and our goal was always to raise a family in the country, growing all our own food, and we discovered very quickly that that meant many trips to the feed store, and we knew that wasn't right. So we spent those years rediscovering the patterns by which humanity has raised food and improved the fertility of their own home place for centuries. And now we teach that. We have 8 children, and you'll see some of them around here because 6 of them are guys. And they're here, they're building the timber frame structure out here. Actually, I should say 7 because 7 of my guys are here. Just one of those guys is my grandson. So my 6 sons and my oldest grandson are here. They're timber framing, butchering pigs, shearing sheep. And I think some of what we are here to share and what Rebecca and Rory have brought us here for is that my kids are what they call the second generation. They grew up on a homestead. They grew up working together. They grew up learning with us and then knowing the patterns of homesteading that make it really work, so we know our work is valuable, we know why it works, and I think in all humility, we want to share with you how happy that's made us and what a cohesive family that's made us. Please visit me and Sean at our booth over here. It's the messy one with the books blowing everywhere, and we'd love to talk to you about your homestead and your family and what a blessing this homestead life is for us.
I'm Allison Bales, and I live with my husband, Barry, and our son, Marshall, on our family farm. It's a Century Farm in Greene County, Tennessee. That's halfway between Knoxville and Bristol, so in East Tennessee. And we raise grass-fed and grass-finished beef, pastured pork, pastured poultry, and pastured eggs. And I also homeschool, and I'm usually found on the farm. And so I am here this weekend to share my experiences with you all. And I'm just honored, and it's just a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And my name's Rebecca, and I'm part of the Homestead team here. So excited to have you all here. I think the best way to kick off this panel is to ask the question, what the word, the role, all the things, what does the word homemaker mean to you personally?
Yeah, that is so hard because when Rebecca had asked me to be a part of the Homemakers panel, one, I want to say yes because I love you guys, right? I want to hang out, but I'm like, I would not consider myself a homemaker. And I remember talking to Annette about it, and she's like, well, like, why? And I'm like, well, I don't cook. I bake bread. Okay, that counts. I do bake bread really good. Talked about it this morning. Thanks for you showed up. But my husband takes on more of that homemaking role. He gets kids where they need to go. He's making sure I've got clean laundry. He's making sure I am fed. And I am handling more of our business things. I mean, he does a lot there, but for, the first few years when we were really growing our business, that was kind of my passion. And for me to be able to do that, for me to feel joy in what I was doing, he took some of those homemaking responsibilities off of me. And I would say for a while I felt guilty by that. And I really had to ask God, why am I feeling guilt associated with this? Because I don't think it was guilt that I felt inside. I felt very fulfilled in my role and what I was able to contribute to my family. But I think society made me feel bad about that because I didn't cook every single meal for my family. I wasn't homeschooling my kids. Tried that, bless you. That's not for me. And I remember at one point in my marriage, Nathan had worked so hard so I could be home with our daughter, Charlie. So she was the only one at the time. And I was feeling that homemaker role, and I was miserable. And he asked me, he was like, I thought this is what you said you wanted. And I realized then, okay, how I define homemaker is different. But I am available for my husband. I am available for my kids. I stop when they need me to listen. And while I do not primarily do the laundry, I'm not doing the cooking, I am contributing in my own way. And I felt really good about that. So now if someone's like, well, are you a homemaker? I am, because I'm being present for how my family needs me to. And that looks different for each of us. And so I really encourage you guys, as you're listening to each of our walks of life, for me, that looks like doing more of the grunt work. That looks like putting my head down and working on a project or, growing food. I grow all the food. My husband cooks, right? So it's a great dynamic. But don't feel like you have to be put in a box because really the only person putting you in that box is yourself. And so I really had to break those barriers in my mind to be like, I am being everything my home needs me to be. And so that's what I would consider a homemaker is what works best for your family in that season and know that those seasons are going to shift. I'm shifting into a role where I will have to probably take on more of those homemaking responsibilities. And I'm going to welcome that joyfully and know that this is a season God's called me to, and eventually we'll probably be in another season down the road.
And that is why we asked you to be on the panel, because I'm sure there's a lot of ladies out there going, wait, my husband can cook for me, and it's not a bad thing. So I think your perspective is a beautiful thing. So thank you.
So a homemaker, I think for me, has definitely changed throughout the course of my life, and I think that's a good thing. Like she said, it's a journey. It's not just one destination. It's a journey. And for me right now, homemaker means I am the one that's home, but I also do work. So I'm not just home. I still have my own business. I still do my own thing. So to me, it's more than just doing the home responsibilities. A lot of times we put it in that box of it means you cook and you clean and you do all that. And while I do love doing those things, well, sometimes I don't love laundry. I'll be honest. Even though I do love some of those things, I really feel for me it's more providing my family with the physical, spiritual, and all those benefits. So it's not just what am I doing in the home? It's am I providing? Am I being a friend to my husband? Am I providing for him? My daughter? Am I, just taking time to be with her? And so a lot of times that means letting go of all those other things and really just being present. And I have a hard time with that. But really just being present for my family. And not just that. To me, a homemaker also means being that role of meeting those needs to anyone that comes to my home. So it's just extending that to them and showing them, hey, it's great for you to be here. It's great for you to be under our roof. We want to extend that courtesy of, physical, spiritual, mental, all those things when you come to our house. So, yeah.
So I've been married for, I think, almost 40 years. Don't tell Sean, I can't remember. But a long time. And that's been, so there's a lot of time for change in that, right? My homemaking has taken many different forms. And I started college. I was destined to be a doctor, which took me about 6 months to realize I'd rather be dead in a ditch than be a doctor. But if you're my age, I'm 60, you were fed, and I suspect everybody since then has also been fed the line that we were supposed to have careers. And I didn't want one, so I got fortunate and met a good man and have never since been gainfully employed. Every year, the U.S. government sends me a little form that says, and yet again, your value to your country has been 0.00. And so my hope, I didn't have a living example in my own family of what that was going to look like. I had a wonderful mother-in-law. But my hope was that I was going to be my husband's best friend and take care of my children. And that's exactly, I hope, what I've done for 40 years. And it's looked different a lot of the time. I think both Jill and Annette really were putting their finger on the homemaker role by highlighting that as women, we are a woman's presence in the home, and that's our primary homemaker role, is we are our husband's best friend. We're the warm arms our kids come to. We're the ear they pour their many, many, many thoughts into. And while for my life that's been raising 8 children, homeschooling them all, transitioning over time from a homeschooling mom, who principally is keeping house and cooking and doing laundry, to primarily I'm a farmer, and I farm with my younger daughter and sometimes with my older daughter. Those have all been, for me, homemaking roles. I'm not a very good cook. I'm not terribly tidy. Don't come look at my baseboards unless you warn me ahead of time so I can go wipe them all down. But I'll show you my garden with pride until about August, when the weeds start to get really rampant. And in all of those things, I believe that because we're the heart of our family, that is like, if the family is a body, we're the heart, that we are still homemakers.
That was a great answer. And when you asked me that, Rebecca, I thought, it is serving and loving your people the best that you can with the tools that you have. You're doing the best that you can do with the tools that you have. And then I thought, man, I need to come up with something a lot better than that and a lot more complicated than that. And then I thought, the same thing that I tell my kids on a test, usually your first answer is the correct answer. So then I thought, I'm not going to complicate it. And I do think that. I mean, it's like you were saying. We've been married for 25 years, going on 26 years, and it's changed. And I have learned more, and I am hopefully doing better now than I was at the beginning. But I think it's all those things that you all were talking about, just being the emotional support, the sometimes the physical support when somebody's got a bruised knee or a cut elbow, and just meeting the needs that you see. I was going to say day by day, but even minute by minute, because it changes all the time. And that's, to me, I think it looks different for everybody in each different season of your life.
Yeah. I want to invite one comment from all of us, because we've just given all the positive stuff and the ways we serve. We're also the person who gets PMS once a month, right? And we're the person who sometimes has an emotional breakdown or is unreasonable, and those are all parts of what makes our family run, right? If we were always just giving, there'd be a void where we are, but we're also constantly receiving. And that's part of our homemaker job, too.
I love that. So that leads us into the next topic, which I was just thinking, these are all beautiful answers, and it's the good stuff, because no one here really, there might be some of you who like to do the laundry. There might be some of you who like to do those things, and that's an amazing thing. But a lot of the times, you're exhausted, and you do want to be that place where the children community can come and feel the warm and fuzzies. Just feel safe, as Laura Ingalls says, right? Home is our favorite word, favorite place to be. And so you want that. That's not always the case, whether you're PMSing or not, right? And so I guess the next question would be, how do you keep going? Is there something that you say to yourself that you go, okay, I'm tired, I'm upset, something happened, but I'm gonna cook that dinner, or I'm gonna wash those dishes, or I'm gonna go out there and grow that food that my husband's cooking. Like, what is it that keeps you going?
Yeah, I would say there's not really any sort of like mantra, right? There's not like this set thing. But for me, having struggled with, until this pregnancy, infertility, like, I longed for this for so long. Like, I desperately prayed for God to give me everything I have. And when you realize that that's not just readily available, that's not God's plan for everyone, when I get overwhelmed or frustrated, I usually know it's a perspective issue for me. And so I'm usually like, God, shift my perspective. I'll be real honest with you. We brought our family, which there's challenges when you bring small children. So Mama slept 2 hours last night because Papa can just sleep through whatever, and he's trying to console, but he ain't helping. And so I got up this morning and I was like, Lord, I need you to reshift my attitude because I am mad for no reason. Like, no reason other than Mama's just tired, baby didn't sleep well, and that was one of those things. And so when I get in those moments of overwhelm, and a lot of times they're uncontrollable situations that overwhelm us, right? A baby didn't sleep, I didn't sleep, this happened, whatever. Very rarely are we in a place where like, oh, okay, we can predict for this, we can go ahead and reshift our expectations. And so I just asked God, I'm like, God, realign me, reshift my perspective on this, and give me a grateful attitude of like, you know what, not everyone has the privilege. Some people are still praying for that child, and I at least have the child that's keeping me up at night. And so I think a lot of times when we get in that rut, the best thing to do is to just ask God, like, reshift my perspective. Even Nathan this morning, we came to our booth, there were certain things, and he's like, take a deep breath. I'm like, I understand I'm being irrational. I just need you to let me have this moment and just ask God to reshift how I'm viewing this. And so he did. He's like, God, just reshift her attitude. Please reshift it quickly for the rest of right now. Amen. And so I would just say that when the crummy days come, because they come often, especially for homesteading, you guys, there are so many unknowns in what we do on the day-to-day that will get us in an uproar. Just, ask God to give you perspective. And when you think about what you didn't have and where you are, it'll quickly make you grateful even for the bad days.
I'm trying to think of it being different than what you're saying, because I feel like a lot of it's going to be a similar. For me, my faith is very important, and if I didn't have that trust in God, it would just probably be downhill every day. And every day is messy, and in this homesteading world that I live in, no day is alike. So as much as I would love to have my day planned, and I have ideas for what we're going to accomplish that day, a lot of the time that's not what happens. And so I have had to, the whole like let go and let God has been just very true for me. Does it mean I don't get stressed? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean I don't worry, but a lot of times the good moments for me always far outweigh the bad. And so it does help if you keep it in perspective, or if there's a moment where you're feeling like, oh, this is just the worst day. Just know, like, this day will pass. Not everything lasts forever. You might be in a moment of a day that's bad. It might be a season that's bad. It might be a long time. But I truly believe that there are better days, and each day we can choose to tackle it in a positive way or choose to kind of be sad. And I just try to, hey, it's gonna be a good day. But know that it's okay to have those seasons, because I feel like sometimes when we're in this valley, then God brings us back up, and it's gonna be okay.
So in my breviary, which is like a Catholic morning prayer book, right? The not very beautiful translation of Psalm 63, verse 5 says, "Do not grow stubborn, as your fathers did in the wilderness, when at Meribah and Massah they challenged me and provoked me, although they had seen all of my works." Now, what were we doing at Meribah and Massah? We're saying, I need a drink, to the God who had stood the water like a wall on our right and our left. We knew he had the power. What did we doubt? That he wanted to take care of us, that he loved us. And that verse has meant a lot to me in the 40 years of diving into how does God make the natural world work, and therefore how can I serve his natural world naturally and get it to produce people food, right? Because I have seen his works. And at some point I realized as I was angsting, I keep cows, I keep sheep and pigs and chickens and big gardens. And there are days, I promise you, when I stand over the corpse of a deceased zucchini and I think, does this work, A true story, like the zucchini's there and I'm just in tears. I can't do this. And some little voice, somebody taps me on the shoulder, my guardian angel, and says, what works has he showed you? I tell you that if you begin to farm using natural methods, you see his works. You see that when you honor his creation by turning to him for instructions on how to work with it, that he will show you his works. And at some point you think, you have the experience both Annette and Jill were talking about where, today is not fun, but it's okay. It's okay that it's not fun. It's okay because I've seen his works. I'm also going to tell you from the perspective of one of the oldest people in the room, and also I hear from a lot of people that we are living in a time of trial. So if you are suffering right now and you think, well, I can't be doing the right thing because God isn't giving me the reward of consolation at the moment, remember that he calls us to suffering. It's one of the few things he promises us, right, is we are going to suffer. And right now I think he's asking for a little bit extra. Often it's not even something concrete. You say, gosh, my husband loves me, my kids are great, my farm's growing, why do I feel rotten? And maybe he's giving us the gifts, but not the consolation from the gifts. He's saying, I'm not going to take anything you value. I'm just briefly going to ask you not to experience the joy that goes along with that. And so I'll just finish with something Rebecca Groves gave us last year. Do you guys remember this? She was talking about an Anabaptist baptism ceremony. And she said, in the morning of the day that you go in to be baptized, you're asked, I think 3 times, who are we putting to death today? Are we willing to be the person who, for this minute, when we're feeling bad, is the person who's being put to death today? Because I guarantee you, God keeps his promises, and when we see that, especially in the natural world, and that's what gets me through those days. Don't misread me. Go talk to Sean. He'll tell you just how difficult I can be. So it doesn't work all the time, but that is really how I think it works.
I would agree with everybody up here that I don't have a mantra. I don't have, 3 words that I say to myself. But I do pray and just say, okay, Lord, make my will and my desire align with yours, whatever that is, whether that's going out and pulling weeds in the garden, which is not my favorite thing, or laundry or whatever. And I am also very blessed that generally when my husband Barry is torqued out about something, I'm not torqued out about that. But then when I am torqued out, I can go and talk to him and he will talk me down from wanting to jump off the ledge because of the zucchini or the eggplant or the beet. And so that is a blessing that I have somebody that I can go and I can talk to and bounce things off of. And just knowing that, I think that in today's society, there is part of the society, some percentage of the society that is telling us what you feel now is the map to the destination in your life. That's where you're going. You feel something, so you are that. And that's not true. I mean, emotions can change on a dime, and they can turn in an instant. And so I just try to remember that too, that, oh yeah, it might be bad right now, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad life or I've made a bad decision. It's just something is not joyful at this moment, but that same thing might be joyful tomorrow. And so I just try to remember just to keep walking, keep trusting God, keep depending on him, keep just keep moving ahead. Don't stop. Don't be so discouraged that just because you have a bad moment, you stop. Whatever you're doing.
What does being torqued mean?
Being torqued out?
Torqued out.
Yeah, being like, really just like, oh, come over to my house and I'll show you that
Show me what it means
Monday
when
through
you're
Friday.
torqued
But
out.
torqued out just
Like
means
that.
like really upset about something. Like somebody's really,
Gotcha.
yeah, somebody's
Okay, I
really,
like-
yeah, what'd you say? Yes. Burned your bunions? Is that what you said?
There you go.
That's good.
They're going to quote that on a T-shirt or something.
That's right. Don't let anybody burn your bunions. Hashtag.
Hashtag.
Don't burn your bunions. That is great.
That's great. Well, I mean, obviously we hear the common theme is there's someone bigger than us doing this all. We're just the ones here, and he's really guiding us in doing it. So having that faith and the belief that we can't do it on our own, and changing perspective, praying through that, like I think that's a common thing through that. Okay, so the next question is going to be, pretend like there's no social media. Pretend like no one here knows you, and they hear you on stage speak, and we are our best selves right now, right, on stage. Give everyone just a little snippet. I know every day is different, but give everyone a little snippet into kind of what life looks like back home, what your day looks like on the average, what your struggles are, like what the good, what the bad, like just kind of a little snippet into life. Without Instagram and what we all see, there's a whole lot more, right? There's a whole lot more to life. And so give us a glimpse into what that looks like.
Yeah, gosh. I feel like most of y'all probably wake up with me in the morning. But
With
yeah,
your coffee.
With my
I do.
coffee. I know, it's a thing. Yeah, it is kind of hard to even imagine a world without social media. And it changes every single day. Without the reminder app on the iPhone, I really don't know where I would be in life. So the night before, that's a huge thing. And I put it in the list of priorities of what has to be done. First of all, Mom ain't doing nothing until I've had coffee, though. So, we're not even going to talk until that happens. And so coffee looks like that, usually grouping with Nathan during the school year, because my kids do go to a nature school. Nathan will get them up, get them dressed. That's kind of his responsibility so that I can get about my day because I have a few more deadlines than he does. But yeah, I mean, it changes. We're usually always talking about one of the first conversations we have around breakfast coffee is, what do you want for dinner? Because I need to be prepared and lay out meat. So we always try to figure out, what does dinner look like for us? What is top priority? And that's always Nathan coming to me and asking, what do you need me to do today? What is top on your list, or what can I take off your list? And we kind of start chugging through that. A lot of that, our kids come with us, like the youngest one's at home with us, so she just works alongside us all day. We'll break around when it's time to pick up my 8-year-old, and then things start to shift after that. After that 4 o'clock mark, if I get anything done, that's great, but my expectations are a lot lower. One of the things we do every night, we have one TV in our house. We don't have cable, but we love watching YouTube. And that's where we catch it. We should do better and watch more farming channels. We're like the Bucket List family and CrossFit. That's what we watch for our entertainment. In CrossFit, yeah. So before we go to bed, the kids, we all gather in the bed. We'll spend about an hour cuddling, watching our latest episode on YouTube. But yeah, it just changes. It's hard to say, this is what the day looks like. We don't have set days for laundry or set days for this. It just ebbs and flows so much. We're just always trying to stay, fluid, or we can just kind of go with the different waves of the day.
But what I do hear is that you begin your days very much as a team and being on the same page before you get out there and really start all the tasks. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole that every day is different is very true for me. My husband does travel some for work, so it depends on the week. Some weeks I am by myself Monday to Thursday or however it works. And so those weeks, there's a little more on my plate. And so it just depends. But we do wake up together. My daughter's 5. She still comes in our room late at night and wakes up with us. So if anyone has that same thing, it's okay. So she's with us. We wake up in the morning. We do usually do breakfast together, which I love that. And we try to do that time before my husband's off to a meeting. And then usually we'll start our animal routine for the day. That always stays the same. I will always go out to the animals in the morning. My daughter will usually come with me, and we'll do that. And then it depends. If it's a day we'll be home, then I kind of plan out what we're doing, and that could be anywhere from home tasks to outside in the garden to all that. Or we run errands some days, and we're out in town. And my parents do live next door to us on the property next door. And they're requiring a little more assistance as the time has passed. So some of my time is involved being with them, which I am so grateful that they are next door. It's made such a world of difference that I can be there for them. And it's great for my daughter, too. So just, I don't know, every day it's kind of weird. We just do our thing. Yeah. Nothing too exciting, really, in honesty.
So let's go back to when you talked about your chores. Sometimes your sweet girl goes with you and sometimes she doesn't. Tell us the difference in the time it takes and the feelings, and let's just be real, the difference in when she's there versus not.
Yeah, that's great. So, I have this idea in my mind, I would have my daughter, and it's going to be like this perfect, she's going to love everything I do outside. She's going to want to, and I'm going to be 100% honest, she would rather be doing like gymnastics inside the house a lot of days versus doing things with me. And so it depends, right? So if she's with me, it takes so long. It takes way longer. Now she's 5, so she's able to, come around a little more, but everything takes a lot longer. There's a lot of breaks in between doing things. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. So it just, sometimes I get more frustrated, which makes me feel guilty sometimes. I don't want to be frustrated because it's taking longer because she's with me and I want her to learn. But that does happen. When I do it by myself, I do it so fast and efficient, but I like it better when she's there. So, I don't know. But it's hit or miss.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, because it is, I heard a lot of laughs. So there's obviously people who can relate. Because it does take longer, or it is more frustrating, or all the things, why do you take her with you? Why is it important to you?
Yeah. It's important because I feel like, it's funny, I get asked a lot, what I'll do, and this is my kind of personal thing, what I'll do for my daughter for school, what am I doing, what are my plans? And I'm like, she's doing life. Yes. She is learning life right now, and that is not my priority. And I feel like when she comes with me, it's amazing what she picks up on. Honestly, one of the reasons we have and care for animals is to learn from them, to gather life lessons. And the things then, it's so sweet at night when I'm laying there and we're putting her to sleep, and she'll say things about her day, or when we did stuff with the animals, and then we'll talk about it. So to me, it's invaluable. Like, you can't put a price on that and the life experience that she gets. So I want her to do it, even though it's challenging many times. Yeah.
And those bedtime conversations that she's saying about that morning that you probably didn't even pick up on, that she remembers, those are the moments.
Well, they notice, that's the thing. The little ones notice so many things you don't realize. And they're watching us, they're watching what we do. And I want to show her that we, lived our life and did what we could, and that's enough, And she's learning a lot. So, yeah.
That's great. And Beth, you are in a completely different season of life where you're not dragging little ones around. They're probably doing most of the work around that you've raised them to do. So give us a little glimpse into what life is like with all these grown children with so many gifts.
So if you live on a farm with dairy cows, usually the first thing you do in the morning, sometimes very early in the morning, is you get up and you go milk dairy cows. And that's been a fact of our lives since like 1996. It was goats in the beginning. In our house, we do a lot of things as a team. I had 8 children, 6 are boys. The first 5 were boys. So we really were kind of a team, basketball team right there. And we homeschooled, and we had a lot of farm chores. So we've always done things as a team, and that's meant breakfast is always, rising is always pretty much a group, whoever's in charge of milking will be up maybe before anybody else. But everybody's up and doing fairly early, and we eat breakfast together. And most of the time, everybody eats lunch together, because if you're on the farm and you're hungry, you better show up when there's food. And then we do always eat dinner together, and that's always a really important piece of our day. At lunchtime, as we tuck into whatever wonderful food we're having, somebody will say, "And what's for dinner?" Because we really enjoy our food, and everybody wants a say in it. We do a lot of working together and a lot of working separately. And I think the thing that characterizes our day is shared vision. It's really helpful on a farm that because it's an integrated thing, all these parts fit together to make one whole, that we pretty much all have to have a pretty good idea of how the whole works, and therefore we can pinch hit pretty well for one another, which is good because on a farm you never know what the necessity is going to be. Like Anna and I, my 19-year-old and I, went out to very quickly do a chore before we went and did a big onerous chore, and we got to the very quickly chore and we found the sheep were out, and they were going to need a totally different setup for fence, and there went an hour and a half, and it changed our day. But because we all know how it works, we can usually pinch hit. I think teamwork and sharing meals, and the fact that our farm work is really about meals. We love food. We think God made food for our joy as well as for our survival. And various of us love to cook. We all love to eat. And we, years ago, and my girls will say, they still get asked this question by people who say, "Don't you think you spend an awful lot of your life worrying about food?" And I think, yeah, and if you have breakfast and you're not sure lunch is going to come along and you're not really sure about dinner either, you're not going to think about anything but food. And the difference is we're doing it now because we love to do it and because it's better food and because we think it's valuable. But we do spend a lot of our lives on food. And I think that's part of our unity. We all eat. We all like to eat. We eat 3 times a day, so it's a great way for us to come together. The other thing that we do daily together is, we say grace before meals 3 times a day. We also worship once a day together. For us as Catholics, that means that we actually drive right down the street to the convent where our farm is, and we attend daily Mass, which is our worship service. And I'm not a cradle Christian. Right? I'm a converted pagan in my older years, right? I was a grown-up. I wasn't very old grown-up, but I was a grown-up. That was always important to my husband, and I am more grateful the older I get that he put that daily reminder in our lives that we are here for God. I love that I can say this at the Homestead Festival here and at HOA. Yeah. Like, hooray for Rory and Rebecca, that we can talk about the important things by talking about the most important things. But I do think that reminder daily, you can say, like, I gave my life to Jesus. I did that. It's, like once and I'm done, so let's move on now. But if I don't remind myself daily or many times a day who I'm here for, I forget, right? And then I get all twisted up. I get torqued. I was thinking that torque is like twist. So is that like when you get a twist in your knickers? You're torqued? Yeah. Okay. That's right. So I get that. And it's good to have that daily reminder in our lives that we do worship together. And just a quick glimpse, I have 8 grown children, and they all still love the Lord and practice their faith. That was not... Like, the potential was there for that to be, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe my childhood. Not only did they make me milk cows, but we had to do church every day. And in fact, it didn't happen that way. You know what I think? I think because we're sincere and because they see us express with our bodies and our lips every day what's important, God, and serving Him through His creatures, that instead of thinking one more hoop for us to jump through, thanks, Mom and Dad, they may have thought that, like at some point. I don't know, they haven't told me. But they do come to see and share what we think is most important.
That's beautiful. I've had the pleasure of having both lunch and dinner with her family, and I remember leaving. I just sat at the table with a whole lot of people, And the conversation, like the clear, just that is their space where they talk very respectfully, maybe different opinions, but there is a clear respect and love and foundation at your dinner table that is just, I wish everyone could experience it. I'm not inviting you to their house for them. I'm just saying it is a beautiful thing to experience a meal in your home, and it's very clear that it's a very special time. So, love that.
I wake up before anybody else in my house, and that is my time to, the first thing that I do is go and do my Bible study, and then that leads into a time of, like I'm learning a different language, and so I'm at the point in my life where I'm looking at longevity and mental health throughout my lifetime, and that's one good way to keep yourself mentally sharp, and so I do that, and then I start working on my to-do list and working through emails and just the things that I have to do, and with my coffee. And then usually Barry is the next one up, and then we start talking about what we're going to accomplish that day. And then breakfast comes, and I do breakfast, and then, it is different depending on what animals we have on the farm. And I always say pigs. I don't know if anybody has pigs, but pigs are a little bit like teenagers to me. They're always the last ones up on the farm, so you don't have to rush out the door for the pigs because they don't want breakfast too early. And so we, depending on what we've got, depending on who needs what, we're out. Then my son is a rising senior, so he doesn't need all that much help with school anymore, but I'm always there for that. Depends on which day of the week I'm either teaching or we're at our cooperative school. And then we kind of start winding down. I cook supper for us all, and we come together and we have dinner together each night. And then we are the same. We've got one TV in the house. So a lot of times if we're watching something together, it's generally like the Andy Griffith Show or Everybody Loves Raymond or something. If we're going to sit down and watch something together, or we might play games. I mean, those, we're looking now at, my husband and I are looking at, time is drawing very closely. It's very close to being over for us because my son is going to go to college and have a great adventure without us. And although my husband might move with him, I don't know, but he's, our time is drawing near. So anyway, that's what we do. And then we generally we're pretty much early to bed and then get up early in the mornings. But that's kind of what we do. We start together, end together, and sometimes we're together in the middle.
That's beautiful. Beth, what is the age difference in all your kids?
My oldest is 21 years older than my youngest. They're spaced roughly 3 years apart. That's pretty much. Okay. That was, by the way, biological. In the days before plastics were part of our food source, right? Before we were all eating plastics, that actually worked more often than you might think.
Do you want to expand on that?
Okay, I'm going to pretend for just a minute there are no men in this tent. So I led an active life. I was, I would say that I wouldn't have been, I was a really average physical human being. But my babies came into bed with me whenever they wanted to. I nursed ecologically, so I remember one time sitting down at somebody's home, and about 15 minutes later, she says, "How often do you nurse that baby?" And I said, "I don't know. Why?" And she said, "Because you've nursed him 4 times since you came in." I'm like, well, he was in an insecure, like a new place, so he's just coming over, checking in with mom, and the way he checks in with mom is like, "Hop up and go and leave." So my baby's nursed a lot, and between, an average to active lifestyle and nursing babies a lot, and that's frequent nursings, and I'm speaking not only from my knowledge of human physiology, but my knowledge of bovine cow physiology too, that frequent nursings suppress fertility. So my babies came 3 years apart because that was how far apart nature sent them. So that was where I went with that. It got a good laugh, so I wasn't sure what I was implying, right? It didn't mean anything about my husband's and my marital life, if that's what it sounded like.
Thank you.
Very active, very active.
And I think we should end there. I'm just kidding. I hope Sean's hearing all this.
I don't think he's in the tent right now.
Okay, so back to lost my train of thought a little bit. Okay, so you have all these kids. It's a beautiful thing. I see a lot of kids out here. I'm guessing they were kind of, so you said 3 years apart. So you have infants, you have toddlers, you have all the things. When did you begin your journey with, they all know the farm life, correct? So tell us what it was like back in those days, how you got through having all those children and the farm life. And not only that, but like, if y'all haven't met the Doherty clan, and it's very clear who they are, they're all out there, you will know them when you see them. When I say that they are incredible people, they are incredible human beings. And yeah, they just are. And so tell us a little bit about that, like what it was like while they're growing up and all the work that you had to do outside, all the things, and then how you managed to pull off all of them wanting to be close and doing what you're doing.
So I think my kids are the greatest on earth, and next to my husband, they're my favorite people in the world, but we can all say that, right? So that's not a measure of how wonderful they are. I think that what Rebecca's talking about, I grew up in a dysfunctional city home. So I do have some perspective on this. If somebody had shown me my life as a grown-up when I was little, and I hadn't known it was going to be me, I'd have probably simply died of envy, right? It was what I wanted, but I didn't see a road to that. I didn't even think it was possible. You Christians would have been like a mystery to me. Are they serious? And are they really happy? I wouldn't have known. But I think, I always had toddlers. I always had nursing infants. Some of them were in infancy special needs. They had a condition which they outgrew, but it made their infancy high need. Sean was there a lot. He chose his work so that he would be home a lot. He hated school, and he was a college professor because it meant, he looked at me when we were like in our early 20s, just married. He was like, I wish I had a job where I could stay home during the summer. And I looked at him, and he said, no, I'm not going to teach. And then he went off and he became a college professor because it gave him his summers off. So he was there to work with them all the time. And when they were all small, he and I worked together. As we started to get the special needs kids, he had a crew of young guys, and he'd take them out, and they'd go do projects. And it was only as, about 1 year out of 3, I wasn't nursing a special needs baby or sick and pregnant. And then I'd be out there too. So it was cyclical. But we were always working together on projects. When we weren't on our farm, we were on Sean's parents' farm working on their projects. And I think the boys really loved teamwork. They also became, like the kind of people we have in this room, people who take more responsibility for their lives than most. Okay, face it, guys. If you go home and you look at all the people, your neighbors, and maybe some of your relatives, and maybe some of your friends and people at work, aren't you proposing to take or already taking more responsibility for your lives than is normal for Americans? Well, that makes you a different kind of person, and then you want to interact. You have more in common with people like that. So the boys always loved working together, and then when they got old enough to go to college and realized not everybody is like that, they really enjoyed working together again. But I think we're sitting in a tent full of people who want to be creative, who want to understand why they do what they do and what it's going to produce for them and for their community. And that work forms us. What we choose to do with our bodies and our minds from day to day makes us the kind of people we are. And so they are, you'll see them out there, they're building the timber frame thing, and they're butchering a hog or 2 hogs, some hogs, a hog. But pigs, and they're shearing sheep and whatever they're doing over there. This is what I wanted when I was a kid. This is what I'm so grateful they have now. is the skills to do meaningful work that they can see fitting into a big picture of a meaningful world that's good to be in. And I think when we homestead, by saying, like, Lord, you made a good world for my happiness and for my care, and I will return thanks to you by paying attention to how you want that taken care of, that we learn about the world as a good place and a meaningful place and ourselves as important parts of that make it better. And we love to work together, and we want to be with other people who can see that too. That's why you guys are here. You came here because you wanted to be with other people like that. Am I right? Okay. I think that was what you asked.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions for any of these ladies? Not, you can start thinking of some. If you do, just raise your hand and I'll come out with the mic. Oh, yes, ma'am. We might be able to hear you from there.
This question is directed toward Beth and related to what you just talked about. I have a medium-sized family, only 6 kids. We homeschool. We have some disabilities, but mine are 15 down to 5. How did you steer your kids, especially your boys who would need to then become productive enough to take care of a family? How did you steer them toward meaningful, productive work as adults? Did that involve college or not college? Was it different for them? But they have to be able to get to the point where their productivity will support a family. And how did God steer their lives, and how did you help steer them towards productive work as adults to be self-supporting?
Did you guys hear that? It was like the $20 million question. Because it's the question, okay, we do all this. Then what happens? What happens to our kids, right? We step out of the mainstream and we do something different. And then we're responsible for the results. Do you know how, I'm sure you all know, how terrifying that thought is? Scary, huh? Right? I'm going to take my kid, and instead of saying, let's see how well I can prepare you for a corporate job that will make you lots of money, I'm going to do something else. And God help us all if it doesn't work, right? And so what was helpful for that was that every day that I asked myself that question, you want to talk about getting the blues. Homeschool moms who get the blues because you worry about what you're doing to your kid's life, let's see your hands. Okay, right, like it's scary. It could have been homeschool dads too. Every day I'd look at the alternative. I'd say, well, I could do this, which I totally don't know is right, or I could put them in school. Okay, we just solved the problem. I'm not going to put them in our local schools. I'm raising kids while Bill Clinton is doing what he does, and that's in the news, and second graders are reading it and talking about it in school. That was like my bellwether was, oh my gosh, second graders know what Bill Clinton was accused of doing with Monica Lewinsky. Not putting my 6-year-old in that situation. Very scary. But we can say, do I teach my kid, do I raise my kid knowing that the world is a widget world? Do I raise him to make widgets and hope that he prospers? No guarantee that he's going to prosper, right? How many of us know lots of people who are well-trained for jobs that were supposed to make them money and don't, or their jobs went away, nobody does that anymore. So I knew I couldn't prepare them for the world. You guys have you young people, you have a huge advantage over people my age or even these ladies' age in that you can already tell it ain't going to work. It's not going to keep going. This culture, this economy is not on a rising curve that's going to take us to some, heights of robotized plenty. It's not working. So that for me and for Sean, Sean is naturally inclined to the good, and he's not naturally inclined to worry. So he'd be like, this is way better than school. Don't worry. Because they really did. When you said we do life. And every year we schooled less and we did life more. And every one of them can, every one of them can read Shakespeare and write a complicated thought and get it across. Not because I educated them, but because good thinking engenders good speech. But we did it the way everybody else is doing it, kind of out of desperation, and we trusted that the Lord was going to take care of it. What have they done? The top 4 actually all went to college. Remember, Sean was a college professor, so that was free for them. It wasn't, anything wonderful, but it was free, and they went. Number 5 went part-time, and then, he went full-time for 2.5 years or something in chemistry. They all did well. He did well. And then he went off and became a brick mason and got married. The other ones look like doing a little part-time. I'll try that, and not finishing. I'm okay with all those outcomes. All the grown ones, that fruit fell close to the tree. So they all have some aspect of homesteading in their lives, whether they work on their in-laws' homesteads or farms, or they have their own. They all raise a good portion of their food or help wider family do the same thing. They can support their families. They have a good time together. A lot of wealth is a question of the proportion between what you think you need and what you actually have. And the thing that you actually have is harder to affect. But you can really do a piece of work on what you think you need. Like you can say, oh crap, I don't need that thing, right? Like, okay, can't afford a new phone? Too bad, the old one will have to do. My car is rusty and filthy. That's my car. So what? It won't hurt anything. It stops making me feel poor the minute I don't conceive that I need it. And so they're all pretty good at that, too. I think the homesteading movement is the lifeblood and the muscle of the future of this country, because we're a whole lot of people who are deciding for ourselves what wealth looks like. But there's still that leap of faith. You just have to do the good in the moment. Don't skip doing the good in this minute for some imagined possible good as in advantage in the future, but do the good in the moment, and then believe it'll be okay. And then when you don't believe it, call me and we'll cry on each other's shoulder. But it turned out well, it's working well.
Any other questions? Yes? I saw your hand first.
So my question is about being burnt out /
Hold on. Let me come over here so we can hear you better.
So my question is in regards to being burnt out / hopelessness. And I know many of you mentioned faith. And my husband and I do believe in God, and we have a lot of faith. Similar to Beth, we are not from the country. We're not even from Tennessee. We live in Tennessee, though. But we're city folks. We're from the Caribbean, other countries, and we're first-generation homesteaders. And not unfortunately, we're blessed to have jobs. But we're in a season of life where we just feel like we get burnt out. We love being able to be together. My husband wants to spend more time with our kids, but we both work full-time and try to homestead. And we're also in our 30s now trying to have all our babies. So how do you keep going with faith when you feel like it's hopeless?
Okay, I'll take a stab at it. Burnout is real no matter what career, what you do, right? And I think something, too, that, I've come okay with is, having seasons where I'm mad at God. And some of you guys might disagree with that as Christians. You feel like sometimes he doesn't answer the prayer. And that doesn't mean he's not good. It doesn't mean he doesn't care for us. And so I think sometimes having realistic expectations, I'm in a season where it's God, why? Why? And when he doesn't really have to tell me why, it's the truth. But it's okay to feel that way. And sometimes it's I realized I was experiencing burnout because God didn't give a green light that I forced a green light for. And that's been really hard for me because maintaining feels stagnant, and I'm not the type of person that likes to operate that way. And so I have put my family in a season of burnout, of hopelessness, of trial after trial, and I'm mad at God, and he's gracious with me. But then it usually always comes back to, hey, I didn't put you here. I'm extending grace to you to help walk you through this, but you put this on yourself. And so I would encourage you, if you're experiencing burnout, because this is typically me, it's a result of me wanting to do more than what God's asked me to do in that season, and realizing, what if Nathan and I continued working our full-time jobs 1 year longer and did just a little less on the farm? Would it seem more manageable now? And the truth is, yes.
Absolutely. Like farming and homesteading is freaking hard. And it's only going to get harder. Is it worth it? Absolutely. But I have to ask myself, did I put that burnout on me or did God call me to that? And I think if I was honest with myself, I put that burnout and sometimes that hopelessness if I'm never going to get there. I'm not where so-and-so is. I'm not working hard enough. So I start to let all the lies of the enemy creep in. And so I would really say, well, if y'all are having all these babies, maybe that's where God's called you to right now. And maybe you say, I will homestead, but right now I'm going to raise my babies because that's the season God's put me in and that's valuable. I'm working through that currently. This is not my plan. And I'm like, hello, you didn't discuss this with me. And then I'm like, okay, God is forcing me to reshift because this is actually what he's asking me to step into, not what I'm forcing myself into. So for me, that's just something that helps.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
I was going to say something really fast. Just to that, I think a lot of times we're at the Homestead Festival, it's easy to feel like you have to do it all. Because there's so many things you can do as a homesteader. And it's easy to kind of get in this, well, I want to do this, we're going to add this. And a lot of times it's overwhelming and it's too much. And with small children and a job, I did it for a long time, it's hard. It's very hard. So know that saying no to certain things can mean saying yes to other things in your life. And that's okay. And like the seasons, we're all in different seasons. So maybe, like she said, just reevaluate because you don't have to do like every single thing.
That's good. Thank you. There was another question over here, I thought.
So mine's kind of going off of that. When and what made you decide to stay at home? Because I feel like me and my husband are at that point. We both have really good jobs, but it's like that's not what makes us happy. And full-time working and full-time homesteading, farming is really challenging. So how did you guys kind of justify someone, whether it was you or your husband, staying home?
I'll take that if that's okay. So when my husband and I got married, my husband is he's a musician. And so he's gone, like your husband, he can be gone for 8 weeks at a time, or 2 days at a time. And so then we had all kinds of issues with fertility and all this stuff. And so we were married for 9 years and then had our child. But I was a physical therapist and I love my career. It's a great career. And so when our son was about 4, we were like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we prayed a lot. We thought a lot. We meditated a lot. And I really felt like God was calling me to be a better steward of the gifts that he had given me. And the gifts were that we lived on this farm and we really didn't need everything we thought we were going to need, what you were answering a few minutes ago. And so it was not necessarily, I don't want to say it was necessarily a sacrifice. It was a shift of resources for me to give up my career that I loved and with people that I loved and come home and take on something that is a lot harder. It's a lot harder to work on a farm than it was to work in healthcare, honestly. I would clock in, do my job, clock out, go home. And so, but what we felt, the reason I did it was because I felt like God was calling me to be a better steward. And he was reminding me that, gosh, you've got a lot of stuff, girl. You don't need a whole lot more stuff. And so what does that really look like if we had a different shift, if we had a shift of perspective? And if instead of just going out and buying everything that I saw, that I laid my eyes on, like what would happen if I was a little bit more intentional about the way I lived and the way I spent and intentional with my moments, not just with my finances, but my moments. And so that is when I decided to come home. And, again, our son he was 4. So it was like, okay, well, am I going to give this whole homesteading and homeschooling a try? And so that's when I decided to come home. But you do have to, I think, really think about is this what God is calling me to do, or is this what I'm calling me to do? And is this going to put a burden on us? And so when I did it, we decided that we were going to do this for 1 year. And then we were going to see what it looked like in 1 year, and then reassess in 1 year. And then if we weren't making it, then I hopped back, then we could really shift down on the farm. And then I could hop back into my career. And another thing was said up here about not doing everything. You don't have to do everything. Sometimes, like I've had people stop by our tent today, and they were saying, "Well, we're just starting. We just don't. We're not really homesteaders." What? You are. You're growing. You're trying. You're doing it. You are doing it. You don't get a card that says, "Hey, you're a homesteader," when you have 800 cows and 52 chickens. That doesn't happen. Like if you are providing for your family and the people that you love, you're doing it. And it looks different for everybody. And so just go slow, walk slow. Don't take on more than you can shut down if you have to shut down. Because, life can change, like that. And so I would just say be aware of that on both sides of it.
That's so great. One more question, because I think we're like way over our time.
I think we've got till 3.
Christian, we good?
3.
We're good. The next one's at 3? Perfect.
Yeah,
All righty, another question. I made the schedule, but I can't remember what it is.
It's because you did everything. You've done all the things. Rebecca has done an amazing job, do y'all think?
Hi there. I first of all, I just want to thank you all for sharing your hearts and the difficult questions. And so I'm hearing about these women talking about the questions that I have of how do you do it and everything. And I'm a bit older. I started doing the homesteading at the age of 60. My husband and I, we feel that there is something here that is so much bigger than us. And so we moved from one state to another state. I planted my first garden at the age of 60. There's no clapping. It wasn't a success. We've made mistakes. We've made mistakes. We put our dairy cow in with our longhorns, and we're doing it all just weird, okay? But what we're trying, and there's no going backwards because we are a couple of faith. But the hard is in the discouragement. The hard is in I don't have a peer. I don't have somebody nearby that's doing the same. Well, I do now. She's a younger woman, but overall, there's no one kind of doing it. And I feel like my husband's still working a job, and so I get up and I do the chickens, and then I do the pigs, and then I do the cows, and then I do the garden, and then I do the housework, and then I do the laundry, and then I make the food, and it's overwhelming. And the discouragement that comes in with that, and it's not a matter of being ungrateful for what God is, where God has placed us in the season, but how do you deal with it all? And do you ever get lonely and discouraged?
Can I take the first part? Sure. Okay. In nature and in history, 60-something-year-olds who are farming have young people who are also farming with them.
We've tried that.
Yeah.
We get on the farm. We keep on thinking there's got to be someone who's and we're not quite.
Right. Okay, so I'm just going to tell all of you older people who are in that situation, let's start working on means to make connections between the young people and the older people, because we were blessed, conditionally blessed, to be growing up when the economy wasn't quite as rocky as it is, and so maybe we had enough money to buy a little land, and now here we are older and maybe trying to do some jobs we don't have training for. Don't think about this year. Think about 10 years from now if you're successful. I can tell you, you are going to be one tired puppy if you don't find young people somewhere who start helping. Now, in the meantime, there is, like remember that there are hard days, but if the overall picture is working, keep going. Don't try and take on, like I'm working with a couple in their 70s who have their first dairy cow. It is a fairly uphill experience, but they're making it work. But let's all sort of commit to beginning to think of the human race not just as people to whom we are blood related or people we like to drink a beer with, but that's my neighbor. We're going to have to reform the ties that locality, actual location on the planet, used to create for people, and begin to reach across that and be helpful to one another. I think a ton of us are here because we're looking for that thing called community. And that starts with us being ready to partner. When the Lord said, love thy neighbor, he didn't mean get your best friend to move in next door. Right. He really did mean the guy next door with all of his problems. And I think that's maybe one of our challenges now as people of the land, as homesteaders. And you're in my prayers. I really pray for that connection to be made faster, sooner, and for all of us. I don't know if that helped.
Okay, I see some hands going up over here.
And I will say, while you're walking around, I think isolation is such an attack that the enemy uses against us. And, that's in Proverbs, that when you are isolated, when you isolate yourself, you start becoming self-focused. And so I think that that's also hard. But also, winter is coming. And so you don't need to clean the house until winter. I mean, you've got outside stuff. So that's what winter is for.
I have a question. So we have a small 10-acre farm. My husband, we have a small business as well in town that he primarily manages. And I know for me and several of my friends, we feel this very strong pull to provide for our children and give our children a different life and feed them differently. And a lot of times our spouses don't always feel that way. So what is your encouragement to those people that we know it's important and we're doing it, and sometimes it feels like this hard place of how do I love and serve and be the person my husband needs and also steward my children and the land that we've been given and all of these things well, because it seems so hard to navigate a lot of times.
Draw a line in the sand. For Nathan and I always joke I converted him. And he's always been super open-minded. I feel like sometimes it's harder to learn something new than to unlearn the way you were taught. And so for Nathan, his intentions were well, but I'd come to him with some crazy idea, or I wanted to do this. And when we first got married and I had my first baby, Lord, I mean, like, I was making my own makeup now. I'm just like, thank God for Tubes & Co. Like, I was growing the beads, grinding them down. Like, this is ridiculous. But I needed my hand in everything. I felt this responsibility to her of like, whoa, I could, talks in here, talks in there. Okay, bad decision there, that's fine. But when you, like, decide to bring life in the world, I make her decisions for her. What I do affects her, and she doesn't get a say in it right now. That's a weight. And so I kind of went all in. Looking back now, I realized I went way too far in, and Nathan didn't understand it, right? And he was just like, I don't get this. And so for me, I was like, hey, this is a non-negotiable for me. This is why I feel convicted in this, and I want to respect you, and I will respect you, but this is my line in the sand. So whatever we need to do to where I can buy from the farmer's market, I can cloth diaper her, which is going to save us money, but that's probably not the way I did it, right? Because I spent a lot of money on it. You know what I mean? And so we were like, how do we make this work? And I don't want to disrespect you, but it's a non-negotiable. And even now, we've been married 10 years. The girls know that man is a pushover. Like, if they want Sonic or ice cream, and this is the thing, they will go and get daddy to do it, and then they immediately come home and tell on him. And so they'll be like, and he's like, I'm going to quit doing this. The only way I'm doing this is if you cannot tell your mother, okay? So he's kind of the pushover that's going to do that, and we still have to come back in, and I'm like, okay, I understand that, once in a blue moon, sure, but I'm noticing a pattern. I work really hard to keep these things from them. And so I feel, and I let him, I feel disrespected when you do that.
his intention is never to disrespect me. So when he realizes, oh, okay, once in a blue moon's okay, when I make this like once a week, that starts to have a really big effect. That makes me frustrated, I'll be honest. And so you have to communicate. And the thing is the more I explained to him how it made me feel, the less he wanted to do it. And be honest with your husband. Like, tell him. Once I made Nathan aware, now he's like, did you see this? You need to stop buying this brand. Like, he is like the freaking chemical Nazi in our house. And I'm like, okay, I will quit buying from them. Or it's like, so-and-so bought this company, like, steer clear. But that just took something of just being honest and open. Like, this is how I feel when you do this. I feel a lot of conviction when it comes to our kids particularly. And even when we had no money, we still managed to make it work because we live so underneath our means. I don't get my hair done. I don't get my nails done. I'm not buying, thrifted clothes. Like, we negotiate our lifestyle to where that's not, oh, well, we can't afford it. Well, we can't afford not to. All of us, I'll tell you right now, if you think you cannot afford to live a healthy, organic life, you cannot afford not to. Reprioritize. And it's uncomfortable, but it's worth it. When you're best age and you're working the way she works, that is a product of how she lives. That's my goal, right? And it's like she couldn't afford to not make those changes. None of us can. And I also think we are raising the next generation. We have to let them know if we don't tell them and show them what's important, someone else is going to show them an alternative. And I want to make sure I'm doing my job well.
Woo. So good. I want to reinforce what Jill just said about children. There's nothing like statistics, which we all know are like they're lies, damn lies, and statistics. But in this case, find the statistics on things, on any kind of problem for children, autoimmune disease, autism, diabetes, et cetera, from 1960 to now. Ask yourself where they're coming, or get your husband, ask himself where they're coming from. That's step one. Is it, if you realize, be totally selfish about it. My chances of having a kid with a serious problem are something like 50 times as great as my grandparents' chance. That's probably not, the food system is probably implicated in that, so I'm going to make sure that they eat good food. And then I'll throw in there, feed bills are anathema to husbands. When there's a feed bill on a homestead, whoever's paying the feed bill sees the homestead as the other person's hobby. But when you figure out how the nutrients flow on an ecological homestead, there ain't no food bill. There's just tons of meat and potatoes. Most guys are turned on by that. Tons of milk whenever you want it, butter, dairy products, good food, and no food bill. So as we eliminate the people bill, absolutely eliminate the feed bill, and have great food to eat, that's very convincing to them because they don't like paying for our expensive hobbies.
All righty, we have time for one more question. I thought I saw another hand. Are we any more?
This is probably more towards Jill and Annette right now with the season of life that you guys are in. But do you guys, with the young kids that you are towing around with you, do you ever have like a guilt that they're doing what like you're passionate about, what you're doing, and are you spending enough time doing like the kid things with them? Because we have little ones from 3 to 9 years old right now, and we homeschool, and my husband was deployed in the beginning of spring, so I felt like a lot of guilt dragging them around through all of the stuff that even though I was including them, was that something they want to do? Is that something they're going to be interested in, or am I going to teach them to be resentful of it?
For me, did everyone hear the question? Okay. So my daughter, I have one and she's 5. And, I said earlier, there's a lot of times she'd rather be doing gymnastics inside the house, which means just twirling and cartwheels, versus being outside with me. And so I don't ever want to do it with her like you 100% have to do this with me, because I do want it to come from a place that she wants to. But at the same time, she has to know, being a part of our home, there are things we do. There are things that are our responsibility. So I tell her, if you don't want to go with me right now, then that means you have to stay here and wait till I come back. Or do you want to, come with me? And a lot of times she'll want to tag along. And so a lot of times I think it's, you ask your kid, what do you like to do? What do you want to do? And focus on maybe some things that they like or want to do, and then do that sometimes. But they also know that sometimes we live here and this is part of what we do, and that's okay. And I think a lot of times you have to live by example. They follow our example. So if I don't look happy to be doing farm chores, or if I'm not excited to go out into the garden, she sees that. And I think she can feed on that. And so I think a lot of times, even for the thought with like husbands, and a lot of times I know women who want to do this homesteading thing and their husbands do not, if they see you trying to live this lifestyle and their fruits it makes them more joyful, more happy, all these things, they're going to say, that's interesting. I might need to learn more about this. And I think it's the same with our kids. You can't force them to want to live this lifestyle. But if you are living it with joy and you're leading, I think eventually, hopefully, they'll want that too.
And I would say too, like, June will be 5, the end of the month. If you leave it up to a 5-year-old, you will do nothing all day, right? And so for our family dynamic, like Nathan and I do this full time. I have to be productive. And so the mom guilt is something we just got to prayerfully work through, right? Because I have a job. That job has to get done to where, like, I will even tell my husband, she can't help me with this. So thank God for that man. And the older he gets, the more patient he is. And I'm just like, bless you. So she feeds animals with Nathan every morning. And that's when I get my critical things done uninterrupted. And so the truth is, like, my job's not to entertain my kids. And I tell them that all the time. It's not my job to entertain you. You have your imagination. Find something to do. And thankfully, if we're homeschooling our kids, my kids go to a nature-based school. Everything they do is outside. So they're out there with us, but they're not doing my chores. They're playing with rocks, and they're building houses out of sticks, right? And so encourage that. If Charlie's like, well, I don't know what to do, well, come up with something. Like, come up with we are so disconnected that we want to give them a screen. We want them to veg out. We want them to be quiet. No, I want my kids to be a free thinker. And you do that by going outside and figuring out what looks fun to you outside of me. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not. I'll come by. I'll see your cool creation. We'll talk about it. But I'm not sitting there building that house with you. But you're learning school, right? You're learning the freedom to build for yourself, to mess up, to start again. And so I would encourage you, don't feel like you need to entertain your kids. Encourage them to use their imagination to come up with something fun to do while you get all your other things done.
That's great. Well, our time is up, so thank you all. Thank you for being here. All of them. Yeah, it's a vulnerable place to be, and they have showed up full force. All of them have tents and spaces out there, so if you want to go talk to them, go find them out there. Thank you all.